So, James Bond number 13, unlucky for some, but not for the producers, it would appear, was Octopussy back in 1983. And Roger Moore recounts all the time that when he was promoting the film, he went on a chat show and the host was saying that there have been so many different titles of the Bond films, what's the title of the next film? And when he revealed the title, when he said it was Octopussy, her response was, "You must be joking." And Roger Moore loves the fact, he recounts it all the time, where he actually said, "Why? What's wrong with Octopussy?" And I mean, it does seem like quite a risque title, but and in many ways the title just wouldn't be used nowadays at all. But it was the title of an Ian Fleming short story, so there's no reason why the Bond producers couldn't have used it. So this was the 13th outing for James Bond. Now, going up against this was a rival Bond film. Sean Connery was starring in Kevin McClory's remake of Thunderball, Never Say Never Again, and I'm not gonna say too much about it because suffice it to say that Octopussy is the better film by a country mile. Never Say Never Again is just embarrassing for all involved, basically. Sean Connery is far too old to play Bond. I mean, Roger Moore looks better as 007 than Sean Connery does in the rival Bond, so that's kind of saying something. The fact that Sean Connery was, Sean Connery actually and Roger Moore were very similar ages when they were starring in their respective Bonds in 1983. But Octopussy won at the box office, and it's easy to see why. It's a strong Bond film. It's again, it's another good film in the Roger Moore era of Bond. It's the second film, follow-up to For Your Eyes Only, for director John Glenn, who obviously made a name for himself as a director. On For Your Eyes Only, did a sterling job, and he's back with Octopussy, which actually is a tighter story. It's actually there's actually quite a strong story to it, and it's one of the more interesting of the James Bond narratives. So the film begins with a nice thrilling pre-credit sequence. Bond impersonating a officer at an airbase and escaping, managing to escape just in time, despite the fact that the plane is rapidly running out of fuel, which leads into a title sequence. Now, very much like Moonraker, actually, the title song isn't one of the best. It's not one of the most memorable, certainly, and of course, for a number of the James Bond films, the title of the film could be used as the title of the song, but it's surely very difficult to put the word Octopussy into lyrics for a song. So that was scrapped, thankfully, and Rita Coolidge was the singer of All Time High. The song, unfortunately, failed to chart in the UK significantly, so it wasn't one of the most well-known James Bond songs, and it still isn't really, but it's not a bad song. It actually fits the tone of the film quite well. And we follow the credit sequence with the song. They're kind of getting a little bit more unimaginative, the title scenes around this point. Maurice Binder was starting to feel a little unwell, sort of mid to late 80s, so he would work on just a few more of the James Bond films on the title sequences. Having said that, it's the opening credits are fine. It suits the film nicely, and we launch into the film about 10 minutes in, and we have a brilliant sequence, very evocative scene, where we actually see the death of another 00 agent. We see the death of 009 at the hands of two of the villains of the film, two of the most effective villains in the film, Mishka and Grishka, who are played actually by real-life twins. And they dispatch 009. 009 is dressed as a clown, and he is holding the Fabergé egg, which is the MacGuffin of the film. It's one of the plot devices for Octopussy, and it's quite a interesting scene to sort of open the film proper, and yeah, it's good. It sets the tone very nicely. There's a nice sequence where Bond goes to auction to sort of bid for the egg against the villain of the film, who we see is Kamal Khan as well. It's a nice little sequence with Fanning, the arts expert, who just can't believe what he's seeing, where Bond is bidding for the egg. And there's nice little moments with the new M as well. I had forgot to mention in one of the earlier reviews that Bernard Lee, who played M up until Moonraker, sadly passed away after Moonraker was completed, and the character of M wasn't actually the actor wasn't changed for Your Eyes Only. M was absent, and but Robert Brown took over as M for Octopussy onwards up until License to Kill, and he actually does a great job. And there's a good relationship that he has with Roger Moore's Bond in the film. There's a kind of I can't believe Bond's doing this. Why is he doing this to us? So there's a negative air, and you can tell that M is obviously still authority, and Bond has to follow orders. But there's a nice little moment where where M kind of smirks at something that Bond says in Octopussy, which is very nicely played by Robert Brown. So a good successor to Bernard Lee, but it is very difficult to top Bernard Lee as M in the Bond series. It's another strong score for John Barry after again another hiatus with For Your Eyes Only. John Barry returned to score the 13th 007 adventure. So there are a number of different locations used for the film, and India is the primary location used in Octopussy. It made a big impression on a number of the cast, including Christina Wayborn, who plays Magda, one of the alluring ladies that is one of Octopussy's ladies in the film. We also have Penelope Smallbone as well, who is introduced as Moneypenny's new assistant, which seems very strange because she never returns. She's only in this film in such a brief moment where Bond sort of remarks, "Oh, you're looking younger and lovelier every day," and Lois Maxwell's Moneypenny says, "I'm over here." And she introduces Bond to her assistant, Penelope Smallbone. Clearly, at the time, I imagine an actress who was to take over from Lois Maxwell as Moneypenny, but the idea must have been abandoned, as she doesn't appear in any of the others. Stephen Burkoff plays flamboyant General Orlov in the film, and there's a larger role this time for Walter Gotell as General Gogol as well in this film, both members of the KGB. And Stephen Burkoff's very flamboyant. He's a theatre actor. More recently, he's been seen in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the remake starring Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara, the American version from director David Fincher. Stephen Burkoff in the film wishes to create a nuclear holocaust in Western Europe. So, of course, he's thwarted by Bond, but he actually is one of the more interesting heavies in the film. Once again, Moore seems to be enjoying himself enormously as the protagonist, despite being well into his 50s. Many believe that Octopussy should have been Roger Moore's last film as Bond. In some ways, yes, I agree. I think he is very good in Octopussy. There's a moment where he kills one of the twins, Mishka or Grishka, and he throws the knife into one of the twins' chests and says, that's for 009. It's a great little moment, nice little scrap between the two of them, and there are small moments like this that are real standouts in amidst all of the comedy and the comic elements of Roger Moore's James Bond. Roger Moore was clearly, not as comfortable playing the darker side, the more human side of Bond. He enjoyed the laughs, he played it for laughs, and that's just Roger Moore. That's his portrayal of Bond, and it's no worse than any of the other portrayals of Bond. It's just a different one. And Octopussy actually, forgive the pun, it actually does come close to an all-time high for Bond. I have kind of stolen a quote there from Lee Pfeiffer and Dave Worrell in their Bond compendium, The Essential World of 007. It's a great book, actually, but they do actually say they believe that Octopussy is probably the best Roger Moore Bond. I disagree. I don't think it's quite as good as The Spy Who Loved Me or For Your Eyes Only, but it is a good story. So there isn't the strongest of the villains in Louis Jourdain's Kamal Khan. He does have a great accent, though, in the film, and the way he says Mr. Bond. Mr. Bund. He doesn't say Bond, he seems to say Bund, which is interesting. We have his sidekick, as in many of the Bonds, is actually more effective. It's the character Govinda, who is played by Kabir Bedi, very famous in India at the time. And we have Vijay as well, who is an ally of Bond. There's a great moment where Bond arrives in India and Vijay is moonlighting as a snake charmer, and he's playing the Bond theme as soon as he sees Bond. It's a nice little touch, actually. It's a very nice scene. And his death is actually a very sad moment in the film, where Bond genuinely feels like he's let him down. And Vijay is assassinated by some of Kamal's men. And unfortunately, neither Q nor Bond can protect him from his untimely death in the film. Maud Adams returns as Octopussy. Of course, I can't believe I haven't mentioned it until now. She's obviously she is the eponymous title character of the film, and she is a great Bond girl. And of course, she falls for Bond. We kind of think that she is perhaps a villain. Before we see her in full, we realise that she's looking out for Bond, and she tries to thwart the villain's plan at the end as well, and helps Bond in disarming the bomb at the circus. What could have looked like a joke, Bond dressed up as a clown trying to disarm a bomb, actually works particularly well. It's actually quite a tense sequence in the film, despite the fact that Bond is dressed as a clown. It's actually a highlight in the film. It's a great sequence in the movie. This is also one of Desmond Llewellyn's biggest roles as Q. For the last few films, he's only appeared in very short sequences. But Octopussy, he uses hot air balloon and basically storms the Monsoon Palace and aids Octopussy's ladies as best as he can. It's a nice little sequence, actually. Govinda can also crush dice in his hands, crush them down to just to dust, basically, which is a little bit like it's a nice little nod to Oddjob crushing a golf ball in his hands in Goldfinger. So that's another very unrealistic but trademark of one of the Bond villains. So all in all, it's not a bad Bond film at all. It's an improvement on Moonraker, certainly, and it's a good story. And in terms of story, it's an improvement on the last few Bond films, actually. Spy Who Loved Me was very much a copy, actually, of the narrative for You Only Live Twice. Moonraker was very outlandish, taking Bond into space. I didn't really care for it particularly as a story. For Your Eyes Only, a better story, and Octopussy is actually one of the stronger narratives of the Roger Moore Bond films, in my opinion. So I think I'd give it a good 7 out of 10, Octopussy. I think it is one of the better Roger Moore Bonds. So perhaps James Bond was to have retired. Roger Moore was set to retire after Octopussy. His 6th Bond film was meant to be his last, to tie with Sean Connery, who also made 6 official Bond films. But Roger Moore was enticed back for one more film. This was his swan song, but he would return at the ripe old age of 58 in the 14th James Bond film. James Bond will return in A View to a Kill.